Good morning, everyone. My name is Francisco Ruiz. This is my first GA as a music director, and I'm really happy to be here. Please rise in body and spirit and join me as we sing Ven Ven, Alégrate Hoy.
Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit draw near. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit draw near. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit draw near. Spirit draw near.
Welcome to our virtual gathering of the West Side Unitarian Universalist Congregation on this Sunday morning. My name is Gracie Bucklew. I'm a lifelong UU, now a young adult in our faith. I use they, them pronouns, and I will be leading our service today alongside Lisa Reitzes. Joining us behind the scenes and making the scenes possible is an extraordinary technical team, making sure that this worship service is delivered to you virtually as gracefully as possible. Whoever you are, wherever you have come from, whatever the color of your skin, whoever or however you love, however your body moves and your brain works, however you identify, you are welcome in this faith community. We gather today from many locations, and we take this moment to particularly acknowledge that our congregation resides on the traditional territory of the Duwamish people. In this acknowledgement, we recognize that the presence of the Duwamish and their heritage is present in the mountains, valleys, waterways, and shorelines that surround us all. May we nurture our relationship with our Coast Salish neighbors, especially the Duwamish people, and our shared responsibilities to this place. At this time, we are acutely aware of the traumatic history of pandemics brought through colonization on these native cultures and the devastating impact it caused. Let us take a moment to offer humble respect for this place and its peoples.
Good morning. It's a pure delight to be collaborating with Gracie Bucklew on this worship service about Unitarian Universalist denominational connections, and also about Father's Day, summer solstice, and resilience. The title of the service, We Are Part of a Larger Whole, comes from something taught to me in UU leadership training as a way of addressing the fundamental and sometimes confounding challenges of belonging to a faith tradition that both affirms individual identity and seeks to form voluntary, intentional community among those individuals. From the microcosm of each congregation, autonomous and self-governing, to the macrocosm of the Unitarian Universalist Association of Congregations, our institutional denomination, are layers upon layers of complex interdependent relationships, often not experienced by individual UUs. Today, Gracie and I will share some of the ways that denominational connections have shaped our experience of being UUs beyond our immediate congregation. The largest version of Unitarian Universalism, of which we are all a part, is the annual General Assembly to be held on June 24th, 28th, this week coming up. There's information on how to register for that meeting in our weekly newsletter, and also be aware there are some things that don't require registration to participate online. Because originally scheduled for Providence, Rhode Island, this year's International Conference of UUs and our global interfaith partners will be entirely virtual. As with many things, many things in this time of pandemic response, this is a mixed reality. On the one hand, going virtual eliminates the cost of travel and increases access to many more GA activities in real time, including worship, study, policymaking, governance, visioning, and social action, forming a broader online congregation. On the other hand, there is nothing quite like being among 3,000 to 4,000 UUs, religious professionals and laity, from everywhere in someone else's city. There's nothing quite like the feeling of the large spaces used for celebration, worship, music, prophetic testimonies, fervent and urgent debate, transitions and honors, mass multi-generational expressions of love, the larger whole. We can't fabricate those experiences, but thanks to recordings from the last few GAs, Columbus, Ohio in 2016, New Orleans in 2017, Kansas City in 2018, and Spokane, Washington in 2019, we can offer small bits, welcoming into our service the voices, images, wisdom, and inspiration of fellow UUs who gathered in faith and community. GA is not a utopia. Rather, for 4 days each year, it has been an ambitious, flawed, sensory overloaded, enlightening, disappointing, often transformative experiment in community that captures in large form what we covenant with each other to seek in our congregations. Our opening words are from the hymn, Here We Have Gathered, lyrics by the UU writer Alicia Carpenter. Here we have gathered, gathered side by side. Circle of kinship, come and step inside. May all who seek here find a kindly word. May all who speak here feel they have been heard. Sing now together this, our heart's own song. To begin, here is the chalice lighting from the 2019 General Assembly in Spokane, with UUA President, the Reverend Susan Frederick Gray, and Reverend Lauren Smith.
As we gather in worship this morning, we light the chalice, the symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith and tradition. I invite the Reverend Lauren Smith, the UUA's Director of Stewardship and Development, and Levi and Leanne Draheim to join me in lighting the chalice this morning. We light our chalice with the words of the 14th century Persian mystic poet Hafiz, whose lyric poetry speaks of faith, love, and the divine. Many say that Hafiz's writings have influenced post-14th century Persian writing more than any other writer. He continues to this day to be one of the most well-loved Persian writers. In the 18th century, when Hafiz's words were translated into English, they influenced some of the West's most prominent writers, including Unitarians Henry David Thoreau and Ralph Waldo Emerson. Let's take a deep breath and prepare ourselves to hear his words. Hafiz writes, "Out of a great need, we are all holding hands and climbing. Not loving is a letting go. Listen, listen. The terrain around here is far too dangerous for that. Don't let go. We hold hands, climbing."
Our Westside Chalice lighter today is Jim Angel.
On a gray pre-dawn walk in the spring of 2015, in the earliest stages of denial grief as his 16-year partnership with the mother of his children was collapsing, Jim's awareness desperately seized on Westside's unique, red, little free library. Jim curiously approached it, clumsily praying that it might deliver some clue or message to guide him in his pain. He earnestly drew the first book that caught his eye. While that book did not seem to offer a message, Jim's eyes drifted to a nearby sandwich board announcing WSUU's Wednesday evening meditation group, and that turned out to be precisely what he needed. From that group, Jim discovered Westside's welcoming and vibrantly musical Sunday services, with their profound congregational covenant and overarching messages of love. Jim realized he was a UU, and Westside was a sanctuary, an open-minded place of healing and strength, where he and his kids, Lainey and Sam, could nurture precious values and grow in harmony with divine interconnectedness. Jim has taught RE, sings with his kids in the Welcome Singers, and joins in activities to advance social justice. Jim dearly treasures relationships with fellow Westside members and is deeply grateful for the unfaltering kindness, creative leadership, and hopeful spirit embodied by this community always, and even more so during these difficult times.
And now let's join together in singing our opening hymn, number 65, The Sweet June Days. The lyrics are by the 19th century Unitarian minister Samuel Longfellow, set to an English tune arranged by Rafe Vaughan Williams.
The sweet June days are come again, once more the glad earth yields its golden wealth of ripening grain and breath of clover fields, and deepening shade of summer woods, and glow of summer air, and winging thoughts and happy moods of love and joy and prayer. The sweet June days are come again, the birds are on the wing, bright anthems in their merry strain, unconsciously they sing. Oh, how our cup o'erbrims with good these happy summer days. For all the joys of field and wood, we lift our song of praise.
Thank you, Scott. Welcome again to our Westside Unitarian Universalist congregation. If you're with us for the first time, we are so glad that you found us during this complex time. Please contact us via our website, wsuu.org, so that we can send you our weekly electronic newsletter, The Westside Week, with information about upcoming worship services and other virtual activities. At Westside, we aspire to be warm and welcoming to everyone, but the necessity for physical distance has required us all to be creative and energetic to stay connected on Sunday mornings. Let's take this time to imagine the faces of our Westside friends and to picture the spaces we keep open to welcome newcomers during our virtual services. You're now invited to send greetings via the Zoom chat box, letting each other know who and how you are. And then, if you wish, please take a moment to send a quick text or email with a loving thought to someone you care about. We're all invited to take a little extra time to be compassionate and kind with those we encounter, however distantly, throughout our everyday lives. To continue these conversations, there will be a virtual coffee hour after the service today. Immediately following the postlude music, stay online by clicking the Zoom link that was included in this morning's worship blast email. That link will also be shared via the chat box near the end of this service, and you'll be able to click and join right from there. The Zoom link will take us into a different meeting format so that we can see each other's faces, take turns sharing. If the coffee hour gathering is large, we will form smaller breakout groups assigned randomly. We hope that during the virtual coffee hour, you can catch up with those dear to you and meet some new folks too. Now, even as we shelter in place, there are many invitations to be part of our UU community. So now more than ever, it's vital that all members read the Westside Week electronic newsletter to stay current on the wealth of information that our ministers, our professional staff, and lay leadership provide to keep us all connected and engaged in the life of the congregation. In particular, I hope that everyone saw in this past Friday's Westside Week, the official announcement that next Sunday, Reverend Deanna and Reverend Christopher will be sharing the service as part of the transition to say farewell to Reverend Deanna, to thank her, and to welcome Reverend Christopher officially as our called minister. Wow, what a year it has been, and here we are standing on the threshold. Don't miss next week's service. Also, as we're talking about, General Assembly, this annual gathering of UUs, is the one place where we practice our religious community on very large scale. While there are a few truly large Unitarian Universalist congregations, most UU congregations have less than 200 members. GA is a place where we figure out how to be in faithful relationship with thousands in our broader UU community. Now, Westside has 4 delegate positions allotted this year in addition to our ministers. And we are fortunate to have 4 volunteers who have committed already their attention and discernment on the issues that will come to a vote during this GA 2020. So much gratitude to Lalani Davenberry, Marion Key, Marissa Ohoyo, and Simon Kanafas, our delegates to the 2020 GA. Now, these delegates want to get your input and want to hear from you. So you can join them today, along with some board members, to hear about GA issues, the issues agenda at this year's meeting, offer input. And there are 2 online opportunities. The Zoom links were in on Friday's newsletter, but today at 12, right after the service, is the first opportunity to connect with these delegates and board members. And there is another Zoom session tomorrow, the 22nd, from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. Again, the Zoom link for today's session will be in the chat area towards the end of the service. Speaking of denominational connections, we are excited to share that in the months of July and August, except for July 5th, that is starting on July 12th, Westside will be worshiping virtually with 3 other neighbor congregations, North Lake UU of Kirkland, Saltwater UU of Des Moines, and Cedars UU of Bainbridge Island. This Puget Sound UU Worship Collaborative is an opportunity to strengthen the relationship between our congregations and the denomination, as well as finding new and creative ways to worship. In this initiative, we aren't being invited to worship at each other's congregations, but instead are constructing a new shared liturgy for these summer months, incorporating some new and some familiar elements. It is certainly a creative experiment, and we will undoubtedly be learning as we go. Sharing these services together also offers us a path to provide some time of renewal and recovery for our own dedicated worship lay leaders and staff, as well as helping to ease Reverend Christopher's parental leave. We're looking forward to these opportunities to worship with our siblings in spirit, and we'll have lots more details available in the coming weeks. So again, keep an eye on the Westside Week. There are things happening online pretty much all during the week. There's cluster activities, there's other kinds of gatherings. And again, we are preparing now for the beginning of the called ministry of Reverend Christopher.
As we celebrate our ways of connection and rejoice in the active life of our community, you will find the words of our congregational affirmation on your screen. One of the most important expressions of how we are bound together as a community of faith, children, youth, and adults, is this spoken affirmation. This is a statement of our highest values as Unitarian Universalists and the promises we make to each other at Westside to create our beloved community. Please join in speaking our congregational affirmation. Love is the doctrine of this congregation. The quest for truth is our sacrament, and service is our prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humanity in fellowship. Thus do we covenant with one another. We will now watch a rendition of the song Building Bridges, often sung in UU youth communities, from the 2016 Columbus GA Synergy Bridging Worship.
Building bridges between our divisions. Building bridges. How hard it is to make things. My hands raw, my palms soaked in sweat. Trembling with the weight of not knowing whether I have what it takes to build a bridge. Not knowing whether I have what it takes to build a bridge between my comfort and your difference. Between your comfort and my difference. Because let's be real here for a second. It is easy to speak of reconciliation. It is easy to speak of healing. But deep in my bones, I must confess, there are times I would rather us stay divided than risk the wounds of change. Building bridges between our divisions. Building bridges.
Now check this out. When I moved to DC, the 11th Street Bridge was almost complete in the southeast quadrant. Now we call that the South Side. This connects the famous Capitol Hill to the notorious Anacostia neighborhood, where nobody wants to go. And what a way to connect the two spaces. Well, for some that is. Others see new nightmares as their neighborhoods disappear rapidly. Strangers from everywhere but the city now engulf DC natives. One noting how the new neighbors speak to their dogs, but never to her. The bridge was built, but now we're even more divided, it seems, as well-to-do newcomers are juxtaposed with victims of poverty. The irony. Building bridges between our divisions. Building bridges.
What if our differences were not divisions? What if our differences were not divisions, but rather invitations to navigate the world in a new way? Not to become someone else, but rather to be with someone else, a witness to their story, a champion of their voice, a friend in their seasons of struggle when all else is lost and yet so much can be found just beyond our comfort, just beyond our self-doubt, just beyond our own guilt, just beyond all those petty arguments and opinions that stifle who we are, just beyond the words that clog up my mouth. Building bridges between our divisions. Building bridges.
Now look, call me crazy, but there's got to be some way to connect the dots. I mean, maybe not in some physical way, because we're trying that, but perhaps in a metaphysical way. I mean, community isn't really much of a community without the unity. My highest hope is that we can bridge these gaps with more action and less lips that just flap. We talk about the change, yet we seldom ever see it. I look around DC every day. Until now, that is. I have the opportunity to be it, the change which I want to see. Do you believe it? Really, I mean, if given the chance to practice what you preach, how far would you be willing to reach? Building bridges between our divisions. Building bridges between our divisions.
I've watched that video several times now in preparation for this service, and distill from it something new, something deeper with every viewing. That performance was part of the annual ritual bridging of youth at GA's, like the one we held last Sunday in our own congregation. I was fortunate enough to participate in the Synergy Bridging ceremony last year at the GA in Spokane as a young adult to welcome the Bridgers into our community. Participation in rituals and activities similar to Synergy Bridging, in which I connect with youth and young adult UUs from near and far, has been a consistent part of my UU experience for some time now. Many UUs happily practice their faith within their church in their hometown and never venture beyond perhaps another local congregation. That's what being a UU means to some people. It means being a UU in that specific community. Their congregation has all they could want out of Unitarian Universalism and more: church committees, musical ensembles, study groups, and the regular Sunday service. They build meaningful, reciprocal relationships with other congregants. However, that's not a universal experience of UU congregations. When everyone your age can fit onto 2 sofas in a tiny youth room in the sort of attic of the sanctuary, it's easy to feel isolated and disconnected in your congregation. And being a young adult during coffee hour following a service becomes somewhat of a Where's Waldo game, trying to spot any other churchgoers who look like they might be around your age. Once I spot one, I try to catch their eye, and we make our way toward each other through the sea of people in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. I can only imagine UUs of color play their own game of Where's Waldo as well. As a youth, expanding my UU community beyond the walls of my church became almost a necessity. You can only do so much with 5 or 6 peers and a couple adult advisors. When I was a youth, Unitarian Universalism was all about greater denominational connections. That's what being a UU meant to me. Being a UU meant being in community, building bridges with other youth from all over. Local, regional, national, even international youth bonds are very strong for these reasons. When I entered high school, I immediately started attending district-wide youth cons. High schoolers from congregations across Washington, Oregon, British Columbia, and Idaho gather at a campground for an inspiring, exhausting, transformational weekend conference led and organized by other high school youth twice or more a year. It was at a youth con that I participated in my first White Caucus, and at another that I first facilitated a White Caucus. I participated in and facilitated small group ministries, workshops, play shops, and some of the most meaningful worships I've ever experienced. I trained in peer pastoral care work to serve other youth and young adults once I bridged at cons and a regional assembly. I served on our district's youth board, the Youth Empowerment Services, or YES team, and chaired its Youth Empowerment Action, or YA committee in my senior year. Bridging out of youthhood terrified me because I felt like I wouldn't be merely bridging out of all these incredible roles and communities I cherished. I would be bridging out of Unitarian Universalism itself, because all of those things were what being UU meant to me. This is a common phenomenon in our faith, so common it has a name: cliffing. Most congregations and our wider faith deprioritize providing resources to emerging adults, those UUs who are 18 to 24 years old, creating a cliffing effect, the feeling of abandonment by Unitarian Universalism after one bridges into young adulthood. Once again, greater denominational connections came to my rescue. I, with 10 other peers and religious professionals, formed the Pacific Western Region Emerging Adult Task Force in 2018. The task force was charged with laying the groundwork for the area of work in retaining bridged youth and ministering to emerging adults in the UU faith, especially in our region. And that's just what we have started to do these past 2 years. We even presented a workshop at GA last year on it, where I got to experience national young adult programming for the first time. This year's GA had to go through massive renovations and reboots once it became clear the assembly would need to go virtual. And almost prophetically, the UA let youth and young adults once again slip through the cracks. The UUA neglected and excluded the youth and young adult GA staff after countless hours of their preparation and still expected them to deliver programming for the virtual GA. So, the youth and young adult GA staff issued a public joint letter of resignation to UUA President Reverend Susan Frederick Gray and other UUA staff a couple weeks ago, forcing the association to reckon with the loss of the invaluable leadership of young people at their General Assembly. In the UUA staff's public response to the resignation, they apologized and recommitted to supporting and prioritizing young UUs. I can only hope and continue to push that they will follow through this time, since the lifeblood of young UUs like me depends so much on a web of greater denominational connections, which the UUA often facilitates. Building bridges between our divisions and refusing to let our differences be divisions, exemplified by this failure to by the UUA, is such an important practice and commitment within Unitarian Universalism and without, especially as we witness and participate in the current social uprising.
Thank you, Gracie, for your extraordinary service, leadership, and wisdom, and for your collaboration on this service today. In a moment, we will engage in a collective act of generosity. We will take time to actively support Westside with our financial gifts by text or by check. 1/3 of our weekly collection for the month of June will be given to the COVID-19 Relief Fund for undocumented individuals in Washington state. This fund provides direct economic support to those in the undocumented community who don't qualify for federal and state benefits and whose work status is adversely affected by the pandemic. It operates in partnership with the Northwest Immigrant Rights Project, Entre Hermanos, and the NAACP, among others, and has been recommended by Westside's Racial Justice Committee. To give by text, the number is 888-530-9056. And if you need to update your payment info, simply text EDIT to that same number, which was shown in the chat area. Thank you for your support of our beloved community. Our gift of music today is Circle Round for Freedom, performed by Dr. Glenn Thomas Rideout, music director for the UU Congregation of Ann Arbor, Michigan. The composer of this song, which is number 155 in our gray hymnal, is Linda Hirschhorn, who is cantor and spiritual leader at Temple Beth Shalom in San Leandro, California.
Circle round for freedom, circle round for peace, for all of us imprisoned, circle for release, circle for the planet, circle for its soul, for the children of our children. Keep the circle whole. Circle round for freedom. Circle round for peace. For all of us imprisoned. Circle for release. Circle for the planet. Circle for its soul. For the children of our children. Keep the circle whole. Circle round for freedom. Circle round for peace. For all of us imprisoned. Circle for
Thank you for your generous giving this morning and every day, your financial support, and all the ways you contribute to this congregation.
Each week, we set aside time as a sacred community for reflection, to become aware of the deep moments in our lives, and to extend our compassionate care to those around us. In this intensely altered time, let us make collective space to hold tenderly the joys and sorrows that have filled our days. From Laura White, a joyful shout out to our dear Shannon for being a skillful and steady pivotal force behind our successful R1 visa process. From navigating our 501c3 nonprofit application to being our site visit lead with the USCIS folks and all the steps in between. You are our visa champion. Thank you, Shannon. A joy from Margot Reinhardt. I was ordained in a small virtual ceremony 2 weeks ago and will be serving the UU Fellowship of McMinnville, Oregon, beginning July 1st, 2020. Thank you, Westside, for providing me the experiences and love that helped shape me as a minister. Always I will carry you in my heart. Congratulations, Margot. Let us hold in our hearts the joys and sorrows, both known and unknown, of our beloved community. May we feel held by a vast love. May we rest in this vast love. Breathing in and breathing out.
Breathing in and breathing out. As you wish, close your eyes or soften your gaze and feel yourself grounded wherever you are. And in this time of dizzying complexity and intensity of everyday life, know that you are enough. In gratitude for the steadfast presence of pastoral care from the Reverend Deanna Vandiver and the Westside Pastoral Associates team, this meditation is adapted from a prayer by Lynn Cox, interim minister at the UU Church of Silver Spring, Maryland. Spirit of life, ever adapting and renewing, we come together this morning with yearnings that do not match. We yearn for stability, for even one moment of feeling like we know what's going on, for the ability to predict and prepare for what is coming next. Yet we also yearn for change. We ache for a world that turns aside from racism, violence, dehumanization, and disregard for suffering. We pray for a change in the illness, grief, isolation, incarceration, and vulnerability of our loved ones. We reach for connections that will remind us that we are worthy as we are. And we reach for connections that will help us to become our best selves. Hold us in the heart of both and. Cradle us in the mystery. Breathing in, breathing out. Much thanks to our musical friends, Emma's Revolution, who agreed to let us share again their stirring call to hope and action. Keep on moving forward.
Thank you so much again for having us here. We look forward to seeing you online, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.
Gonna keep on moving forward. Keep on moving forward. Keep on moving forward. Never turning back. Never turning back. Gonna keep on moving proudly.
Now you know the whole song.
Keep on moving proudly. Keep on moving proudly. Never turning back. Never turning back. Gonna keep on singing loudly. Keep on singing loudly. Keep on singing loudly. Never turning back. Never turning back. Gonna keep on loving boldly. Keep on loving boldly. Keep on loving boldly. Never turning back. Never turning back. Gonna reach across our borders. Reach across our borders. Reach across our borders. Never turning back. Never turning back. Gonna keep on moving forward. Keep on moving forward. Keep on moving forward. Never turning back. 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 See you next time.
I first heard that song live at the 2005 General Assembly in Fort Worth, Texas. Emma's Revolution was part of a wonderful concert celebrating the musical and activist legacy of Pete Seeger. When I contacted Pat and Sandy about using their video again, they mentioned that Fort Worth was their first GA, and they haven't looked back since. Of the many abundances of the GA experience, the wealth of music was certainly one of the most profound for me. At my first GA, 1997 in Phoenix, Carolyn McDade, composer of our hymn, Spirit of Life, and an enormous amount of beautiful song, was honored by the UU Women's Federation in a conference room packed to the gills. At the 2000 GA in Nashville, Holly Near was a featured performer in one of the large gatherings and leading that enormous room in the her song in our hymnal, "We Are a Gentle, Angry People," was spine-tingling. My identity as a Unitarian Universalist happened to have been shaped and nurtured by longtime UUs who were deeply engaged in denominational connections. So from the outset, having the benefit of a work calendar of financial resources that allowed me to jump in with both feet, I was encouraged, well, pushed really, to participate in UU activities beyond our congregation in San Antonio. Unlike here, where there are over a dozen UU congregations in the Puget Sound region, in South Texas, there are few. One congregation in a city of over 1 million people when we were there in the late 90s. So off I went to GA, and as they say, had my mind blown. Between 1997 and 2004, I went to nearly every GA: Phoenix, Rochester, New York, Salt Lake City, Nashville, Cleveland, Quebec City, Long Beach, California. Each one distinctly different in their settings and agendas and character as the denomination evolved. Each year, I also evolved in my UU and congregational identities, so I went with somewhat different purposes, choosing workshops and worships and public witness experiences that called me, but also what I wanted to bring home as a worship leader, board member, teacher, friend, spouse. It could be an overwhelming time, 4 solid days of encounters and ideas and debates, glorious sounds and inspiring words. I felt like I would come back with figurative Post-it notes stuck all over me, trying to hold on to all that I had experienced and learned. But honestly, there was no way to express what it felt like to be there, to be sitting in a conference center ballroom listening to Episcopal Bishop John Spong talk about the book of Exodus as an example of the Jewish tradition of midrash, or interpretive narration, and realize that I could hear through the wall Dr. Isaiah Barnwell in the next ballroom teaching that group to sing the Underground Railroad song "Wade in the Water," which includes the Exodus story. I thought my head would explode with joy. Or being in Salt Lake City, watching UU youth walk the streets in the downtown area, blocks from Temple Square, the world hub of the Mormon Church. This GA included exciting and respectful interfaith dialogues, and I learned that the UUs were considered better guests than the Southern Baptists, who had come to town and declared that Mormons are not really Christian. For a time, I was able to become a GA junkie, and knowing that I was still a newbie because I'd be among people who had been there for 10 and 20 and 30 and 40 years. And then after we moved to Seattle, GA became a way to reconnect with friends from the Southwest District, both from our San Antonio congregation, but also folks I'd met at a leadership training in 1998, a number of whom went on to become UU ministers. GA was where I seriously explored whether professional ministry was the right path for me. Got to witness and feel transformed by the prophetic lineage of ministers, past, present, and future. GA is where I realized how many different ways that UUs do church and how to be a UU in public. GA is where I got to experience the brilliant, organized force of the youth and young adult caucuses, vocally engaged in the policymaking and visioning business of the denomination, demanding accountability and inclusion. GA is where I got to participate in UU worship in all sizes and shapes, from 8 in the morning with 30-minute services, often featuring homilies by newly ordained ministers, to the largest worship services with a mass choir where I heard sermons that I will never forget, to youth-led worship sitting on the floor of a hotel conference room at 10 in the evening. Similarly, UU denominational connections come in all sizes and shapes, and even before pandemic circumstances could increasingly be electronic and so available to a wider swath of participants, those whose schedule or finances would not allow them to make the annual pilgrimages across the country. For me, some of the most memorable UU connections were at the regional level, like week-long summer camps or weekend district conferences. The Elliott Institutes in summer and winter at Seebeck on the Hood Canal here are legendary, beloved times of intentional community and respite. It was at a summer institute in the heat of southern Oklahoma that I expanded my understanding of religious pluralism, was introduced in workshops and rituals to earth-centered spiritual traditions, participated in my first large-scale spiral dance in an open field at dusk. And at a regional conference in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, learned about the remarkable power of congregations collaborating to effect change locally, to be a collective and ferocious force for social action and advocacy, to witness for justice. 2001, Sounds of the Spirit. Now, it's possible that Reverend Deanna and I crossed paths at this 2001 meeting. I like to think so, that a web of UU denominational connection formed there that reached into the unknown future that we've shared for a time. We are, the two of us, and our congregation. We are all part of a larger whole. Our homily today is from the Reverend Kimberly Quinn Johnson, minister of the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of the South Fork on Long Island, New York. It was presented at the 2017 New Orleans General Assembly at one of the morning worship services.
This week together, we are contemplating resist and rejoice. We have been hearing a lot about resistance since the election this November. Resist Trump, resist fascism, resist authoritarianism, resist corporate greed, resist the destruction of this planet, resist deportation, resist the criminalization of Black and brown bodies, resist hate, resist fear. How many of you have found yourselves participating these past months in some acts of resistance, some mode of resistance? I want to tell you that that large and small-scale political resistance, though, is only one kind of resistance. If you are like me, you can see resistance in your daily life as well. I resist things all the time. I resisted handing this homily in April, which made things very difficult for the team that was working with me. We resist things that inconvenience us. We resist things that make us uncomfortable. We resist things that are unfamiliar. We resist change. We have been experiencing some resistance here in this faith as well. Perhaps you have been feeling it at home in your congregation or your church or your fellowship. Resistance to how some talk about the holy, resistance to how some worship, resistance to the big one, the term white supremacy, resistance to the sense for some that they are losing their place in their church, once familiar and comfortable, now foreign and challenging. And isn't that the story of our country today? For some, once familiar and comfortable, now foreign and challenging. Sometimes we are resisting authoritarianism, fascism, corporate greed. Sometimes we are resisting our own discomfort, our own inconvenience. And sometimes when we are resisting change and progress and truth. Not all resistance is the same. Resist authoritarianism, yes. Resist a conversation about whiteness. And you are hearing a lot about this here this week because it is so important. Not all resistance is the same. And so how do we know the difference? What I use as my guide and what I really want to talk about with you this morning is love. And I don't mean love juiced up on hormones. That is temporary. What I mean is revolutionary love. Some of you were at a conference with me, I know, a few weeks ago about revolutionary love. Love that is paired with power. Love that Audre Lorde tells us is the partner of justice. Love as practice. Love as commitment. Love, revolutionary love for a revolutionary time. To put it another way, love is the act of connection. Love is a commitment to act in ways that honor and nurture our interdependence, our interconnectedness, that network of mutuality that we so like to talk about. Love is the daily practice of acting in ways that create more space, more opportunities for not just ourselves, but for others. Love is a rejection of fear that pervades our society. Love is a rejection of the lie that difference is a threat. Love is a rejection of domination. Love is a rejection of the false comfort of safety. Bell Hooks invites us to consider that when we choose love, we choose to move against fear, against alienation and separation. The choice to love is a choice to connect, to find ourselves in the other. The practice of love, Hooks promises us, offers no place for safety. The practice of love, we risk loss, hurt, pain. We risk being acted upon by forces outside of ourselves. So how do we know what resistance is worth engaging in? How do we know what resistance is not simply reaction against discomfort and inconvenience? How do we know what resistance closes us off and what resistance opens us up? Resistance, I think, that is grounded in love and blossoming out of love. That is a resistance worth my time and my energy. resistance that emboldens us to face fear, resistance that courts courage over safety. Resistance by itself can steer us down a narrow street that we don't want to be on. Resistance, though, paired with love, born from love, resistance that pushes open doors, that builds up bridges, that knocks down walls, resistance born from love changes the entire world.
Along with singing this first verse, I invite you to join us, join the body prayer team in these movements that they have come up with so beautifully. I am born from the strength of love. I am born from the strength of love. All that I am today, all that I bring today, I know that it's enough. Oh, I am born from the strength of love.
Resist and rejoice. I will admit to you that I was a little surprised to encounter rejoice as the second part of our theme. In my experience, Unitarian Universalists don't really do a lot of rejoicing. We do a really good job with reflection. We have a few songs about joy. We teach our babies, enter, rejoice, and come in, and we sing it to a peppy, upbeat melody. Joy, though, like love, is one of those things that I think we tend to get wrong. Not completely wrong, but not completely and wholly right either. Like love, joy is not simply affect or feeling. Joy, too, is a choice. It is a commitment. Joy is a recognition and an acknowledgement of love even in the face of suffering and despair. The theologian Barbara Holmes tells us that joy unspeakable is not silent. It moans, hums, bends to the rhythm of a dancing universe. It is a fractal of transcendent hope, a hologram of God's heart, a black hole of knowing. Joy unspeakable for our free African ancestors is a drum talk that invites the spirits to dance with us and tell tales by the fire. For the desert mothers and fathers, joy unspeakable is a respite from the maddening crowds and freedom from church as usual. And so when we rejoice, we give expression to that joy, even the joy that is unspeakable, especially the joy that is unspeakable, the joy that is twirling around us, writhing, moaning, humming, dancing, drumming with sadness and grief and sometimes anger. If you had occasion to walk yesterday by the Black Healing Space, you may have heard our rejoicing, our singing and rocking and swaying, clapping and humming and moaning, even in the face of our sadness and despair, our anger and our grief. Rejoicing opens up a space for healing and for strength. It makes bearable the hurt and loss and pain that comes with love. Rejoicing is what gets us through the suffering to the other side. We sing out even if we are out of tune, even if we can't hit the note, even if we don't know all of the words. We sing out and our voices merge with the voices of others, and we create something that is like magic. Rejoicing is giving ourselves over to be lifted up by a faith in something beyond ourselves, a faith in God or a faith in the past and the future, a faith in each other, a faith in love. To rejoice is to enter into a collective celebration, a collective effervescence that magnifies itself, that amplifies itself, that creates something entirely new. When we rejoice, we are birthing the strength of love that is enough to hold the entire world. When we rejoice, we are breathing the strength of love that lifts us up and carries us on. When we rejoice together, we are blessing the strength of love, bringing it forth and sending it on its way.
What a timely gift from Reverend Kimberly Quinn Johnson. I met Reverend Kimberly in Chicago the summer after she delivered that homily. She staffed the week-long summer seminary program for youth, which I attended to discern my calling to ministry and learn what it meant to be a UU religious professional. Now let's join in singing our sending hymn, number 1020, Woyaya.
We are going, heaven knows where we are going, but we know we're there, and we'll get there, heaven knows how we will get
Before we release our chalice flame, our closing words will be a musical offering from Linda Hirschhorn, who wrote this chant inspired by the words of Bertolt Brecht. In the dark times, will there also be singing? Yes, there will also be singing about the dark times.
In these hard times, there will always be singing, always be singing. In these hard times, in these hard times, there will always be singing, always be singing. In these hard times, in these hard times, there will always be singing, always be singing. In these hard times, in these hard times, there will always be singing, always be singing. In these hard times, in these hard times, there will always be singing, always be singing. In these hard times, in these hard times, there will always be singing, always be singing. In these hard times, in these hard times, there will always be singing, always be singing. In these hard times, in these hard times, there will always be singing, always be singing. In these hard times.
Our service will conclude with the singing of the fivefold Amen. But first, much gratitude to all the musicians, guests from General Assemblies, and the AV team for making this service possible. Thank you. You are invited to enjoy a postlude gift of music from John Hanson, and then join the virtual coffee hour from the Zoom link in the chat area. And remember, we have the opportunity to speak with our 4 GA delegates following the service as well. Our time together may be ending, but our call to service in the world has only begun. May you leave this space with a heart of peace and compassion, ready to love the hell out of this world. Thank you for being a part of this faith community.